Good morning. I'm Peter Donovan with the Soil Carbon Coalition, and this video is about how to prepare soil samples for carbon analysis. When I take a soil sample, which I do very carefully, and I usually take 8 gridded cores as explained in our manual, which you can get from soilcarboncoalition.org downloads, and I dry the samples thoroughly on plastic plates and usually staple my sample bag to the plate so that I have confidence about which one is which. You don't want to get them mixed up. So to start processing a sample, I have to get it through a 2mm sieve, and I'll take this bag, make sure it's all empty, and the equipment I have is a National Institute of Standards sieve, and it's 2mm grid size, and it's pretty good. These are about $50, and I use a Corningware pie plate for the bottom, which seals fairly well, and I can see, and it's easy to clean. So this is my sieve setup. So I pour the sample into the sieve. I'll swirl it around to get any fine particles through the sieve, and the larger chunks are remaining on top. So these larger chunks I will then put in the mortar and pestle and grind them so that they can pass through the sieve. And I use a Coors Tech large mortar and pestle. Make sure it's porcelain. These are kind of expensive, but they're very good, and the larger the better. You'll have better luck with a larger mortar and pestle. So my hands, I've been handling soil. I don't think I have a lot of oil on my hands. I'll use my hands to take these larger chunks and put them in the mortar, and I'll smash them with the pestle fairly gently. These smash fairly easily, and then I'll use the grinding action to further reduce it. I can feel a few rocks in here, but I'll pour this finer stuff back into the sieve, swirl it around some more, and now I have the larger chunks, and I'll put some of those back into the mortar. If you put too much into the mortar at a time, your efficiency goes way down. So I'll put a little bit, smash it, and then proceed to grind. And also I feel a few rocks here, but that's okay. That's what the sieve is for. See a little bit of a root chunk here, which I can discard, but that won't make it through the sieve anyway. Again, swirl, run everything through the sieve. And this soil is fairly soft, so I'll just put the whole rest of it into the mortar and see what I get. I just have a couple of larger rocks here which I can discard. I like to work outside because it's less breathing a little bit less dust, and also it's easy to discard stuff that you don't want. Now this last bit has a few small rocks in it, and I don't want to grind those rocks, but what I'll do is kind of massage this gently so that whatever little clumps of soil are will be reduced in size. So I'll massage that a little bit, dump it back into the sieve, swirl, and what I see, I've got the larger rocks I'll pick out because they'll keep the mortar from going down to the last little bit here. I'll give this one final massage here. You can hear the rocks. I am getting some fine particles off. And the idea of the massage is that you remove the fine particles that may be adhering to the rocks. And for carbon analysis, usually soil is defined as the fine material that goes through a 2mm sieve. So these look like pretty much all rocks, small rocks. So I'll dump those out. Clean my sieve. So what I have here is a sieved soil sample. And now what I want to do is homogenize it thoroughly, because with the analysis we're only burning perhaps a gram of soil. And we want that to represent a much larger sample, and that sample in turn we want to represent a much larger area, even a 4x4 square meter grid as I use when I'm sampling. So I'll do this for several minutes usually. Make sure I've homogenized it thoroughly. And now I'll take several heaping tablespoons and put it back in the mortar. I'm taking from different sections of my container here. And that gives me plenty of soil that I'm now going to reduce to a smooth powder. That gives me plenty of soil for the analyzer, which only takes a few grams at most, and also for an archive sample for me to keep. So I'll take the pestle, and in this case I'm going to grind this to a fine powder, a silky smooth powder. I can hear a small rock in there, and what I want to do with that small rock is to grind it up. Everything that goes to the sieve is considered a soil sample. I'm using a fair amount of pressure here. Okay, so what I have here is a very fine sample. And I'll proceed to split this sample into two bags. One is the original bag that I took the sample out in the field with, and I'll put the same label on that. And I'll take a couple of spoonfuls and seal that up. And this is what will go to the lab for analysis. I like to prepare my own samples to make sure I get a consistent, homogenized subsample. And I'll put the rest into the original field bag. And this is for my archive, which I'll keep. These are thoroughly air-dried samples. They should be fairly stable over time. And last but not least, I'm going to test this soil. Since I'm only going to do total carbon analysis, I want to test this soil for inorganic carbon. And I use distilled vinegar, and I'll put some on there and see if I see any signs of fizzing. And I see a little bit. I see a little bit of fizzing here. Yeah, it's rising and it's fizzing a little bit. So I'm going to mark that down on my notes about this particular sample, that it has some inorganic carbon in it. Anyway, that's kind of the drill. I'm Peter Donovan, and this is a video by the Soil Carbon Coalition. Here's my bus that I sample a lot all over the country, or have been, and right now I'm in the middle of the Wallowa-Whitman National Forest, and it's a great place to sample, and I have work outside.